going to jump into your 8 rules of writing. And deeper, we kind of just touched the surface when you wrote that article. And you wrote that article a long time ago, and you really stick by these principles when you write any of your books.
Right. And what this is just not, it's just the rules are really rules for writing your novel using screenplay ideas or screenplay rules. And so in reality, when they go to the page which says there are 8 rules for writing screen to print. Now, what do we mean by that? Okay. It means writing means using screenplay rules in order to write your novel. And like for example, here, like today, we live in a new literary world of 140 character Twitters, okay, Twitter words. But and the reading audience at New York Times, who enjoyed reading literature, has rapidly declined among their subscribers. Or to paraphrase Eleanor Leonard, literary fiction is what they leave in the boring parts that everybody skips. Or to put it another way, literary fiction is the fiction of ideas. Its primary purpose is to evoke thought. The writer's goal is to self-expression. Any consideration of the reader, if one exists at all, is purely secondary. But popular fiction, that's the fiction of emotion. Its primary purpose is to evoke feelings. The writer's goal is to entertain the reader. Any consideration of expression, if one exists at all, is purely secondary. So one can still hope to write the great American novel, but if you want to make writing your career, you have to make money. And many experts on writing agree that if revenue is what you seek, then you must write for markets, not for prosperity. Pursue a writing career not so much for fame, but for fortune. So I suggest in these rules that writing stories that are screened to print. So how is that done? Well, what rules apply? To do that, we need to talk to Hemingway. After he finished The Old Man and the Sea, Hemingway wrote to his brother, telling him that he did not think there was a single worsted word in the book. He may be right. The story is lean, powerful, is a powerful tale. So lean that it may well be the only book ever written to have nearly every scene transposed into the version, the film version. So that's the idea of these writing screen to print using screenplay rules to write your novel.
All right, so let's go to rule number 1.
Okay, rule number one is to think scenes and not chapters. What does what I've written look like on the big screen? Okay, so you write that way. You write a story in such a way that it would look good on the big screen. What I'm saying is that we can all learn something from Hemingway. He had some tips for writing well. Use short sentences. Use short first paragraphs. I would add that all your paragraphs should be short, sweet, and to the point. Use vigorous language, action language. That you'll come up with a good voice of who you are. And say what something is rather than what it isn't. He learned this style while working as a newspaper reporter. So now, if you've spent any time on writing discussion boards, you'll see that the majority of comments about writing style seem to fall into 2 groups. Those who believe the flowery prose of the literary is real writing, and then those who feel authors should write to be marketable and choose to not to be or to choose. So what I'm saying, what's the word? Uh, Obfuscation. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it
Yeah.
right. So now there are those who believe that paragraphs and even pages of narratives are necessary for successful storytelling. Well, that's not true. Okay, so if you're thinking about movie scenes, I was thinking about writing your chapters, thinking a bit in creating a scene and what would that look like on the big screen?
Right. And when you're thinking about looking at what it looks like in the big screen, you're really visualizing the story, aren't you?
Correct. That's right.
Visualizing based on your history of watching other stories.
Right, and that leads to an important rule number 2: show, don't tell. I know, but that's been a rule in writing for many, many years. But how do you go about doing that? Right? Uh, when you're telling something, is abstract. It's passive. It's less involving to the reader, and it slows down your pacing. It takes away your action. It pulls your reader out of your story. Showing, however, is active and concrete. creating mental images that bring your story and your characters to life. When you hear about writing that is vivid, evocative, and strong, chances are there's plenty of showing in it. Showing is interactive and encourages the reader to participate in the reading experience by drawing their own conclusions. All right? You're not telling them what's going on; you're showing them and let them draw their own conclusions from your prose. Dan Brown's symbol suffers from the fate of telling and not showing. One critic said that if he could cut out about 20% of the narrative of chapters and it wouldn't hurt the story. So why is showing so important to screen to print? Well, think about it. 90% of all screenplay is showing. That is dialogue. There is very little narrative in the screenplay, very little telling, except for a few short paragraphs before certain scenes or before a scene to paint the environment and the mood of the characters. But the vast majority of the screenplay is dialogue. The dialogue tells the story. You have to tell the story through dialogue.
Yes, and if we're not, so basically, what is the mistake authors make? And when you talk about rule one, they what do they when you read some of people's books?
Well, like I said, a perfect example of that is Dan Brown. Okay, his book called The Symbol. He gets way into narrative. In fact, you want another example? Think about uh, the old man and not the old man. Excuse me. Think about what's it? Uh, who wrote the whale song, the whale story.
Moby Dick.
Moby Dick. Yeah, think about Moby Dick. I remember having to read it in high school. It was one of the literatures we had to read, and he'd go on and he'd have paragraphs and paragraphs or chapters and chapters of whales. All right, you should have you thought you were reading a natural history textbook. Okay, and you get so a lot of showing, but not a lot, but not telling. Probably could have cut all that out. Uh, the same thing with the book. The author of Hawaii wrote a book about Colorado, and he have pages and pages and pages of the sex life of this animal, and you know, and what it looked like out in the prairie, what the animals did there, you know. So authors, and of course these people are revered as great authors. But if you want to really make if you don't want to become famous as an illiterati, then you want to write to you want to make money. And so these are the rules because a screenplay is really lean and it takes into effect using that concept of showing and not telling.
Got it. I'm getting an understanding that a lot of times we blow it away versus really getting them that visualization so you see this is in the movie screen. That's the key. Like I'm working with a client right now, brainstorming ways of his story. And what I'm learning is specifically enough, is this look like a Netflix series when you're talking to them? I guess anything when you're trying for people that can picture it, they're more likely to do it. If they can really feel like they're in it, they're more likely to be involved in the story.
That's correct. That's correct. You are giving them a chance to interpret their own expression of the story. Instead of telling them, you're showing them, and then let them decide what it really looks like in their brain, in their mind.
All right, let's continue with rule two.
Now, number three. Get on to
Three,
number
three, three. The other three. Yeah.
And here's something that you can do in not only writing fiction but even writing articles. For your business or your company, if you're in charge of writing copy or anything like that, you start your scene in the middle of the action, right? Or start with a dialogue as frequently as you can. Don't jump into this thing with long narratives. And if you already painted the scene in the previous chapters, you don't have to do it again. Just jump right in, have the action start, or the dialogue start, or something that the reader is going to be drawn into that chapter, drawn into that scene. Uh, the you want to give them a hint of the mystery of what is to come. If you begin explaining what's going to happen right in the beginning, you're not giving the reader a chance to say, yeah, well, gee, I wonder what's going to happen. I use the device in my novels called the prologue. All right. This breaks another. I break another cardinal rule because editors and publishers claim they don't like prologues. I think they can be used to grab the reader's attention before the actual story starts. uh, Show don't tell types of stories are looked down upon by of course, the people that write literature. But I believe that today's reader, the USA Today and the Twitter generation and what have you, and all the other chat bots or what have you, is not looking for tomes of literature, but a quick and entertaining read. Even Michael Crichton later on honed this down to his later chapter and his later novels. His books were written in such a way that they could be easily turned into screenplays. And now there are times when several paragraphs of narrative are necessary to get the story out. But always ask yourself first, can I show this information instead of telling it? And when can I do it?
That's key. If you can't do it, it's not going to work.
Right, exactly. If you can't, if you begin to show things, then what you're doing is you're writing a documentary again.
Showing it and that's that visualizing piece. All right, next one.
Okay, rule number 4 to writing screen to print. Try to create friction, tension, or conflict in every scene. Good movies do that. All right. One of the most important elements is the use of conflict and tension in the movie. Or to quote Tina Morgan, inserting conflict into your novel is not quite as simple as inserting a fist fight into the storyline. Conflict and fiction can be as diverse and as individual as you are. You can also be used effectively to heighten tension and increase suspense. So the conflict, tension, whatever, it doesn't have to be physical. It could be emotional. You could have the characters in an emotional conflict, or an argument, or showing their feelings about what's happening in a scene. So if your character is in enough danger from one chapter to the next, right, that's the question you want to ask yourself. And like I said, danger can take many different forms. The easiest and most obvious is the physical danger, but don't forget the use of emotional danger. Um, Pile on the emotional danger along with the physical as much as possible. You want to make your character come alive, and the characters are never perfect. Try to make the perfect character. That's boring, right? And, try to create a deficiency in them in some way, a weakness. Okay, and you can play on that weakness emotionally, not necessarily physically, and you can cause that conflict, the conflict within the character itself. So don't ever leave a finished chapter, or what I call scenes, without rereading it, looking for the inclusion of conflict or tension in the chapter. I always do that. Very rarely that you'll be writing a scene or or a chapter, excuse me, that doesn't have any conflict of some sort.
Right. And when you and I see what you're saying because if people aren't feeling it, really feeling it, it's not going to work.
Correct. Correct. Now let's move on to number 5. You want to write conversationally, okay, and in particular, kill that semicolon, right? If you're working with Microsoft Word and you get to the point where you want to add something and you put it always wants you to use a semicolon, okay? And I think that's, yeah, just continue to use the comma. Write like you speak, right? Style be damned, or in the words of Dorothy Parker, okay? Says if you have any young friends who aspire to become writers, the second greatest favor you can do to them is to present them with copies of the elements of style. That's the first. The first greatest, of course, is to shoot them now while they're still happy. So take that element of style, forget it. Right? Conversationally, just like you're talking to somebody. You're talking to uh, you're talking to your reader. So use that type of style. Just so it flows. There'll be problems with the way they speak and what have you. That's you put that in there.
Okay. All right, next rule.
6. Plot, of course, drives the story. But what drives the plot? Right? Well, characters do. In general, you come up with a story idea, then outline the major plot points that unfold your story idea. Right? This is called a wireframe of your story. So you create just a wireframe, major plot points that unfolds during your story. So that's what you're going to track. Okay. Next is that character behavior drives the plot. Okay, so what drives the plot points? Well, the characters. and their behavior drives those plots. So your next step is to hang the character experiences and behavior on the wireframe of the plot, aiming for the sequencing of their experiences to match up with the overall scenes of the plot. If you're able to do this, then you have a story. All you need to do is fill in the details. That's how I tell people. I say, "Well, how do you write a book?" And I say, "Well, start by looking at your major plot points of your story. It starts here, goes through there, and ends there. It's a wireframe. It's very thin. There's not much of a story, but at least you know where you're going and what's going to happen at major points. That's going to turn that story, or that turns that plot into a story." And of course, you got to pick the characters who are going to drive that plot at that very point. Okay. And of course, what drives the character? The behavior. And don't cheat the reader by giving them behavior like, oh, well, that guy is, that's simple. I understand what he can do. Make it a behavior complex because they're going to come in, it's going to become important later on in the story.
And what I'm hearing from you about when you talk about behavior and complexity, that the character really has to be well developed, it sounds like.
Yes, he does. And the development is not necessarily used in narrative. This is such and such and such that went on and on and on. He has this background. Let the background come out by other characters. Let other characters draw out those background. A lot of times you'll not a lot of times, but most times you're going to see a relationship between the character and his best friend or some other person or some other thing, and that challenges him to behave through the story, but it also challenges. It also explains their background and what have you. So yes, a well thought out character uh, is very important in driving the plot forward.
And without that plot, things don't work.
Right, exactly. Just can't throw people out there doing nothing. You got to have an idea of what's going to happen to uh, this character that you're developing. In movie writing, they have a thing called you create a log line. A log line is maybe just a couple of sentences, but it actually has within that log line, it really has the meat of what your story is about. And so think about when you say what's my wireframe. How can I describe that wireframe in 2 or 3 sentences? And if you get down to that, then you know how to write. You create your plot points, you create your plot, then create characters around those plot points in order to drive it, make it happen, and then you'll have a story.
So how did you learn about doing that?
Uh, I pretty much break a cardinal rule of writing. You're supposed to read other books, supposed to read other authors. You're supposed to read, and I don't do that. I watch movies, lots and lots of movies. Movies taught me most of these things that we're saying here. And these by watching movies that taught me how to write. So again, I'm a little bit different, but yeah. So my suggestion is, sure, if you want to read all the other authors in your genre, go right ahead. But watch the movie, or the movies, and you'll see all of these rules. Every one of them are present in a screenplay in a movie.
Okay. Very, very interesting stuff. Next rule.
Number 7, the reversal or the all is lost moment. You could see this in almost every movie. The most obvious, of course, in romantic movies, right, where everything is going really great, right? Uh, there was a point where the story is working fine for the hero or the heroine. Then, bam, everything goes to hell for the main character. 2/3 through the movie or the story, there's a reversal. All right, and that's really good because I really like the reversal because it surprises the reader. And you got to be careful with the reversal. You just can't pull it out of the air. It's got to make some sense when they see it. Said, oh, that's right. I could see him behaving like that. I can see the story developing like that. Okay. So, uh, so
Yeah.
we, uh, okay. So you have this reversal. Everything seems to be going the hero's way. But all of a sudden, a subplot appears that threatens to send the hero and his objectives right into the crap can. And that subplot is really going to be developed not only in himself, the weakness comes through, or there's something going on in the environment that's not expected. Okay, so this is very this another example of this all is lost moment where it looks like everything is lost. When the hero resurrects himself, this challenge is faced, and the movie then hurtles toward the climax. Right? This is important in novels as well as in movies. So look for that all is lost moment. It's always there with a good movie or a good book.
All is lost moment. That's an interesting thing. I wouldn't have known about that. All right. Rule 8.
Well, the last rule is the dismissal. Right. So you're reading a story, or your reader's reading a story, or anything, and all of a sudden you're following this character all through the pages, then they disappear. The reader has, what happened to that guy or girl? You have to dismiss the characters in your books, unless there's some guy that just pops in, like the bartender and stuff. That's fine. He has no importance in the story. But if they have any importance at all in driving the story forward, of the story, then you got to dismissal. You got to tell the character at the end he died, he withdrew, who knows where he left, he skipped town or whatever. But you got to show that so that the reader says, "Oh, I can see what happened to that guy." Okay, so anyway, so you want to whatever the activities are, you got to have his activities or her activities. It has to have a satisfying ending. You can't leave them hanging out there. You need to end their lives or finish their relationships. If you thought out each of your continuing characters' roles in the movie or in the novel to drive the plot forward, you'll ensure that you'll have a logical plot structure.
Because you have to have an ending for the
Right.
character.
For the
Oh,
character, right? For the major but not like I said, not the guy that walks in to carry your bags or something. You create the character.
meaning at one point it could be just basically because the series is over. That was the ending for them.
Yeah.
It's not death. Sometimes it's death, but not always.
Now, I don't like series. I mean, Netflix and all that. I just don't like it. I think tell the story. That's it. Tell the story in 90 minutes, and that's it. But there are some series I do follow, and I find them interesting, and I see what they're doing. I can see, uh, I can see how they can continue the series with the way they describe the characters and bring in new characters or what have you. Uh, One of the best, which we never missed, was 24. Uh, that was a great series, and 24 episodes in 24 hours. Okay, and and you would think that a particular subplot is finished. Boom, something else pops up. So done very well. I'm following right now. The newest one is Nautilus. I find that Nautilus is pretty good. They're keeping you interested by bringing in new characters and new scenes and new environments. And so, even though I would like to have it done in 90 minutes, but so all they really do is just take a character and a plot point, and they just drag it out, right? But it has to be done correctly so it maintains your interest. And I've been watching the Nautilus, and I'm seeing now where am I going to get bored of this? But so far, not yet. They kept increasing things and changing things. The characters are there all of a sudden. You know about them and how they're related to the other characters or to the plot. So that's that the so if you're going to write a series, make sure you study some of the series that are good. All right. So anyway, these 8 rules, if you follow them, it's the screen to print. You will have a very readable and enjoyable story where the reader will feel his or her investment in time and money were worth it. So you're up for it. You have a ready-made screenplay from your book.
All right. Go to frankfiore.com right now, and we'll have the link in the comments section so people can check that out. Appreciate it. Frank, thanks again.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
That was a special simulcast